Lead me to some soul today. Oh, teach me, Lord, just what.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 81. We're so glad that you're with us today. My name is Dan Barker. I'm one of the evangelists at the Vestavia Church of Christ in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. It's just a little south of Birmingham. Those of you that know me, that if you've seen these before, you know that I'm passionate about our subject, which is evangelism. And I have been ever since I obeyed the gospel when I was 21 years old in Owensboro, Kentucky. And ever since then, I've been trying to find everything I could read, anybody I could listen to, talk to, be coached by, however you want to say that, is to see how people are leading others to Christ in their community. And back during COVID, we came up with this idea of doing a podcast and to be able to find out who the people are that are actually doing this, where they are in the country, and how they're doing the work. And it's been fascinating. And probably 80% of the people I've not met in person, but our guest today I was able to meet just a couple of weeks ago. And before I introduce him, though, I want to do something I've done just about every episode, is that in trying to learn how to lead others to Christ, as I said, I'm passionate about it. And I'm going to use some Bible terms. I've always been striving to teach others, to sow the seed, to learn how to be a fisher of men and women, to make disciples, to persuade, as Paul said, to persuade men and women, and to teach others to teach, remembering what Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2, and the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men, of course, and women, who will be able to teach others also. And then later in the chapter, Paul says to Timothy, he uses this phrase that I really like. He's encouraging Timothy to be useful for the master, prepared for every good work. And so we came up with this idea, as I said, to find the people where they are in the country and interview them. And that's what brings us to episode number 81. It's just been incredible. We've learned so many things, but we're excited to have with us today Mike Wilson. If you would, tell everybody a little bit about your history, for example, where you were born, how old you were when you obeyed the gospel, and where you are now. Just kind of bring us up to speed.
Well, I am currently preaching in my hometown of Santa Clara, California, which is in the heart of the Silicon Valley. We are 45 miles just south of San Francisco, down the peninsula in what is called the South Bay area. I grew up here, and I've spent most of my life preaching in California. I did spend 4 years at Florida College in biblical studies there. I preached 5 years in Alabama, a couple of years up in Oregon, but most of my time has been out here in California. I am a remarried widower. My first wife died of inflammatory breast cancer, and I remarried a widowed preacher's wife whose native country is Germany. And so she carries a red passport. I carry a blue one. And we have traveled back there several times. Have a couple of daughters, one in Minnesota, one in Alabama, and have preached full time for 42 years. Again, mostly out here on the West Coast, even though I've done gospel meeting work probably in 23, 24 states and preached in maybe 4 or 5 foreign countries. But mostly I'm a West Coast guy, California boy. And so I know the environment out here. And it's challenging sometimes, but it's also highly rewarding because, ironically, there are a whole lot of people looking for something better out here. And so it's a constant challenge, but extremely rewarding.
Well, I've been excited about talking to you, and we got to meet, as I said, just a couple of weeks ago. And I want to tell everybody how we met. The elders had asked Mike to come and for a weekend and present his series on how we got the Bible. And I'll let you tell everybody about it in a second, but just the treasure trove of things that you sent here that we were able to set up almost like a museum here in the building and let people come in and go through and look at all the artifacts and the old Bibles, the old manuscripts, all the things that you have. And Mike, it was really, really good. And they're still talking about it. So that was really good. And I know there's other people that are going to be listening to this that might be interested in what you do there. So share that with everybody if you would.
Well, I normally don't ship a whole crate of stuff from one part of the country to another. Vestavia Church underwrote that, but about 5 or 6 years ago, and I joke about this, but there is a kernel of truth to it. About 5 or 6 years ago, I sold a house in California and bought some books, and was looking for some alternative investments, and somebody suggested investing in old artwork, and I'm not an art connoisseur, but I do know something about old Bibles, and so I started collecting old Bibles one after another, and then got involved in manuscripts and replicas, reproductions, originals, and just came up with a bigger and bigger collection. And we did a How We Got the Bible Museum Day 3.5 years ago here in California. And it was just a Saturday. We set out about 20 tables. We had different stations. We had a video station and different tables where we had exhibits on how we got the Bible down through the ages. And we had 300 visitors to that one-day event. And so I thought, well, we're onto something here. I put together a little book, Inspiration to Ink, the big picture of how we got the Bible, and am now doing just a lot of meetings across the country on that subject. And my goal is to take the scholarly vocabulary out of the mix and just deal with the important steps of the integrity of the process down through the ages. And I do have an exhibit that accompanies it, particularly for local churches, but once in a while, like Vestavia wanted to ship those things out. But it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding again, because this series has prompted a whole lot of people to tell me that it has increased their faith. We've had baptisms that have come out of it. And so I think there's a pent up interest in learning more about where the Bible came from. It didn't plop down out of nowhere. There's a process involved, and people are eager to learn more about that.
Well, and you did a really good job of explaining all that as you shared with us while you were here. And there's so much going on. There's always a lot going on, but there was a New Testament times too. But there's just so much going on in our society today, and I was really impressed of the things that you shared with us, of the interest that you've seen there, as you just made reference to, of people that are interested in hearing about the Bible and how it all came together. So that's exciting for your evangelistic work there at home, isn't it? Of the potential people, the potential studies that maybe could be set up.
Yeah, it really is. And I started to put this into a gospel meeting format. And the first time I taught a class, 13 sessions on this at home, we had a baptism, former Muslim. And there's a big story I could tell about that. First time I did a gospel meeting on this in Southern California, the final session, a young lady came forward to be baptized into Christ. She told me this series put her over the hump. And a young man from Iran who was initially baptized in the class, he said this series put him over the hump. And so anytime you can deal with people's real world questions and get them over some obstacles that they potentially have in a fair hearing of the gospel, then that's a good thing. And I'm glad that it's been able to serve that purpose for several people.
No, it's so exciting. Again, back to the purpose of this podcast is to find out how people are leading others to Christ in the various parts of the country. And everybody's, we're all teaching the same gospel, but there's the community that you're in there is different from Vestavia, for example. Just the makeup and to where I grew up in Owensboro, Kentucky, or we talked to a brother earlier that we've done 3 interviews today, but he's from Boston. So the environment is different all over, and uh, and yeah, and one of the fellows we were just talking to, he was talking about he's on the north side of Birmingham, which is he's probably not that 30 miles away from me or from where we are here. But he was talking about how much the community is growing. And they've just built a huge new baseball facility up there, and talking about all the people that are coming in there. I hadn't even heard of that. So, but he said just a huge growth up there. A lot of young people are moving there for jobs. So there's all kinds of opportunities. But some communities, they're almost dead. There's nothing going on, and congregations are dying. And this is not negative, it's just reality. But one of the things that we've heard in doing this podcast is that Joseph Sullivan lives in Tampa, and he's done some research. But there's 2 conservative congregations that are closing a month, and there's a significant preacher shortage right now. And so we're trying to get people stirred up and say, okay, what's going on here, and what can we do to help? And like the things that you're doing there could end up being a real benefit to some congregations out there that would be able to have you come in and share what this work that you've done with them. One of the things I like to do, and you mentioned a couple there, I call it telling the conversion story. Share with us, 1 or maybe 2 that you'd like to share that you think the audience would find interesting.
Let me share with you maybe 3. Okay.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
All right. The first one that I was just alluding to of the man who was Muslim, came from Iran. He was walking his dog in the neighborhood, and we had put up a sign in the front of the church building during Halloween season. And this was just on a whim almost, that Adam and Eve wore a costume when they sinned. And and he started laughing when he saw that sign as he was walking his dog in the neighborhood, and said, I've got to go to church there. And so one thing led to another, and he came and we got a Bible class going. He was in that How We Got the Bible Wednesday night class. But the more we studied and I've done something forever and ever on Ecclesiastes on the front end just for a session, and then Luke, and then Acts. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But as we were getting through paragraphs in Luke toward the end, he had put the Bible onto his cell phone. He said, I've got this on every device. Before he was baptized into Christ, he said, I want you to make me a promise that we continue studying indefinitely, because I want to learn everything about this book. And so, and we run into a lot of people like that out here. Another one that I'll tell you about is a young lady, Chinese, grew up in Beijing. She was out here in a graduate studies program and learning English on the side in an English class. Had a Taiwanese fellow student in the English class, brought her to church here. That woman backed out, and we lost contact with her. But Han stuck with it and found out she was Buddhist. And so we got her into a Bible study after her very first session here, got a guest registration card, a visitor card. Got her into a Bible study, and I found out she was Buddhist. So I came with my guns loaded with all kinds of evidences for Christ, and even maybe some things that I was going to say about Buddhism. And she stopped me dead in my tracks in the very first session. And she said, I don't know anything about this evidences stuff. All I know is this is the first time I've ever stepped into a church building.
Wow.
And this is the first time I've ever been to church, and I saw the love for God on all the people's faces, and that's what I want.
Wow.
And so one thing led to another. We opened up, again, Ecclesiastes, Luke, Acts, and she learned about Jesus. We introduced Jesus to her for the very first time. She eventually called us her Chinese parents, and she was our Chinese daughter, and she's been around the world and down in Southern California, China, and back, and she's back with us now, and already leading other people to Christ. And she's extremely evangelistic, and she got a master's degree in accounting down in UC Riverside, and we have a Zoom class with some of her accounting friends who are Chinese on Monday nights that she's incorporated into that class. And so it's exciting when you can teach someone who begins to teach others. One more I'll tell you, just because it was so unique. When I was a young man working in Southern California, was at the church office one afternoon and got a call out of the blue, and an older woman, she was, I think, around 80 years old at the time, calls out of the blue and says, I'm calling churches, and I would just like to find out if I could be baptized there. I just want to be immersed in water into Jesus Christ. She said, I've been a Seventh-day Adventist, and no, she was a Christian Scientist, correction, most of her life, and she'd been reading her Bible. This is a number of years ago, and she said, in reading the New Testament, I've come to the conclusion I need to be immersed in water into Christ's church. I want to be immersed, none of this sprinkling business. I want to be immersed in water, none of this Holy Spirit baptism business. I want to be immersed in water into Christ's church. I don't want to be baptized into a denomination. I want to be immersed in water into Christ's church. Can you do that for me? I just about fell off my chair.
Wow, I guess so.
And
yeah.
it confirmed my faith in the Bible and in human beings, the ability to just open up a Bible, read it for oneself, and come to that conclusion. It's amazing, but it's true that people can do that. And it taught me that very early on in my preaching career, that there are people like that out there. And to this day, I will say this, we get two kinds of prospects here. We're doing all this digital evangelism and getting all kinds of people. And we have two kinds of prospects right here in the Silicon Valley. One is like Han, who come to us and they know nothing about Jesus or the Bible, and they are burning with curiosity, and they want us to introduce Jesus to them and introduce Christianity. And then the other kind of prospect, which I didn't think really existed out here any longer, but it does, and that is people that are so disenchanted with human denominationalism that they're looking for a New Testament church. They're looking for biblical Christianity. And in recent months, we've had a bunch of those people that have bombarded us. And I didn't think they existed here any longer, but they do. And so we, even out here in unchurched, atheistic, agnostic California, people are looking for biblical Christianity. So those two kind of prospects, very different from each other, but those are the two that we run into more than any other category.
I think there's so many benefits for doing something like this, but I think a lot of guys thinking about preachers, just they get, depends on how long they've been in a certain area, but they think this is the way it is everywhere. It's everywhere, just like it is right here, but it's not. And I think it's so important to be able to talk to other people, like you and others that we've interviewed, and to hear the stories and help me realize that there are people still looking. There are people. There might be few. Well, it's going to be few, but like the three examples that you gave there. Now, that there would be an 80-year-old that would show up that has come to the conclusion herself by reading her own Bible, well, that can still happen. Yeah. And all of them, I know you do give God the glory for the results of all of that. But there's just I just think there's a world of opportunity out there today, even though the mess that we've got with all this political nonsense going on and all the things that we have, there are people, I say this in a simple way, there are people out there that still want to go to heaven. Yeah. And they don't know what they don't know, to use an old phrase. And they're looking for somebody that would take some time and show them what they've learned and to share this good news with them. They're out there. And you're saying that, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned political nonsense, and I don't want to delve too deeply into that in this forum, but because we're in that in overdrive out here sometimes.
I know it.
But I think that there are opportunities that come out of that. The COVID mania of the last 3 years was especially difficult for churches here in Santa Clara County, and the county imposed mandates, the state imposed mandates. We're so, in my opinion, so intrusive and overblown that not only did it present some special challenges for Christians, but I think it messed up a lot of people. Yes. And in society in general, there was this pent up frustration to the point of young people's thoughts of suicide off the charts, things of just a pent up frustration with the system, with bureaucracy, with the government, and people are looking elsewhere for answers. And we're doing all this digital evangelism right now, and we've had some recent assemblies in the last few months where we've had almost as many visitors as we've had members. Wow. And that's unheard of in some other areas of the country, but it's happening right here in California. I think because the craziness of what's gone on externally is affecting people's internal well-being, and they're looking to God for answers, and we're capitalizing on that. And as you said, it's not everybody, it's a minority, but you get a minority out here where you've got 40 some odd million people, and that can add up very fast and keep us busy all the time.
Well, and I always tell everybody, Matt just gave me the signal. We got 5 minutes to go.
Oh boy!
We're just getting warmed up, right? But talk. Listen, you've mentioned it a couple of times. Just a short version of when you say digital evangelism. Tell everybody what everybody's got. Okay, I think I know what he's talking about. But what are y'all doing? Because I know you're all doing some special things there.
Yeah, we're spending some money and enlisting the help. Initially, we enlisted the help of Matt Richmond in Temple Terrace, Florida, and then Brady Cook in Texas to help. And we're actually paying quite a bit of money to up our Google standing in the search engines, do some social media target advertising. We put videos on our website and tailor-made our website for those who are interested in finding out their purpose in life. And so we've done all this targeted evangelism online in which we are getting anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 new hits on our website every single month. And we're getting a couple of people every week that have filled out a purpose life form on our website. That goes to us. We follow up with those folks, and we're getting all kinds of Bible studies out of it. And so spending a little bit of targeted money that is well coordinated in digital effort is allowing us to get extra visitors to our church assemblies and extra Bible studies. Some of them are Zoom oriented, like this conference call. Some are face to face, and we've actually had 3 recent baptisms that have resulted from our digital evangelism efforts, and we have others in the pike So I'm very confident that that's going to mushroom as we go forward.
If people wanted to look at the site, what's the address that they could go to
Santa
look at?
Clara Church of Christ.com.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention before we close is for many years, since I cut my teeth on evangelistic work out here on the West Coast, where we're not in the Bible Belt and we're not in a situation where a lot of people are churched. So a long time ago, I started doing on the front end of my evangelistic efforts a one-shot lesson on Ecclesiastes that is designed to put a purpose-driven life aspect of bait on my hook on the front end. So I do one shot on Ecclesiastes, tell them basically why we're here, what our purpose in life is, and that lesson almost always pulls people into the process and drives their curiosity. And then I introduce them to Jesus using mostly the Gospel of Luke, paragraphs in Luke to build their conviction of mind, trust of heart, surrender of the will, and then follow that up with cases of conversion in Acts and tell them what to do with that faith. So Ecclesiastes gets their attention, Luke builds their faith, Acts tells them what to do with that faith. And as Harold Comer said a long time ago, evangelism is not curriculum specific as long as you're teaching the gospel. And I do believe that. But that approach works particularly well with unchurched people when they don't know a thing about the Bible. You're introducing them with Ecclesiastes, and they're blown away by how deep it is and how challenging it is. And then you're introducing them to Jesus, and then you're telling them what to do with that newfound faith in Jesus by going through cases of conversion in Acts. It's not complicated, but it's extremely effective.
Well, you might find this interesting. With the fellow that taught me, his name was George Pennock in Owensboro, Kentucky. My wife had obviously started teaching me, and he was preaching there, and that was what he did with me. And I was a college student, and we looked at some verses in Ecclesiastes, the very same thing you just did. And look, so you brought that back to mind there. That was how. And I was in the Baptist church at the time, and so making all that transition. But thanks for sharing that with everybody, and that's really good. The people that are listening to this has been so good, Mike. And maybe you've got somebody that's saying, I want to talk to Mike some more, or he's got me stirred up here. And is there contact information that you could share if somebody wanted to reach out to you?
Sure. They could shoot me an email at mikewilson777@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And do people give their cell phone on this?
That's up to you.
Yeah, that would be fine. 408-529-8121.
8121.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, and if you would, we would appreciate it if you would share this with the congregation there and others that you know, and because we're trying to get the word out and let people know that there are people out here that are working, and it is work, by the way, right? There's a reason it's called personal work. And that's why some people don't do it, but to try to keep each other motivated and by knowing what's going on. So somebody's watching, and you heard this probably on the other podcast that you listen to. I call it the one thing. There's not one thing, but if I called you and I said, I really want to learn how to do this, Mike, what's one thing that I need to learn, or what's one thing I need to do to lead others to Christ? What would you say?
I don't think there's a one magical secret, but if I could summarize one thing into about 3 or 4 components, it would be number one is you need to depend upon God more than anything else. I have a lesson called The Role of Prayer in Evangelism. And I think that that technique wise, we want to do it all on our own. And the one thing I have learned over the years is dependence upon God opens up tremendous doors of opportunity. Secondly, love God like never before with every fiber of your being, and love people. Love people. If you genuinely love people that you're trying to help, that's going to come through, and they're going to open up. They're going to reciprocate by giving you an open ear. And so those would be my bottom line.
No, that's really good, and I agree. I mean, and those are powerful things. But so much of and you know this over all the years is that the value of learning how to build relationships with people where they feel comfortable with you and have confidence in you, and sometimes some people are, they're just introverts maybe, or they're just shy and they don't know how to start up a conversation, but like you said earlier, and I'm seeing a lot of this, there's just, and some of it is built on, like I won't get off on it, but what's the name of the movie that's out there right now about Christ? The Asbury College there in Kentucky, and you've got some things like that are going on. It depends on how you look at it, but there are people, like you said earlier, for whatever reason, they're looking. And all of a sudden, they're interested perhaps in things that they were not interested in before. And we may not agree with a lot of the things that are being taught. In fact, there's things that we don't agree with, obviously. But it's like, what do the scriptures talk about? Paul said about the Israel or the Jews. They were what? I'm drawing a blank here. They were zeal without knowledge. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, there's people out there that right now, and you're seeing that with what you're sharing with some of the digital things that you're doing. They have a zeal. They don't know what they're looking for, and that's where we can be there to help them and share the knowledge that we have about God's word.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and so again, I thank you so much. I wish we had been able to spend more time here. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time today, and we'll follow up with you. But we appreciate all the work that you've done over the years, and brother, keep it up.
Well, you too. Thank you very much, Dan.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Who pray, melt my heart and fill my life. Give me one soul today.